There are a lot of regional roast beef sandwiches around these United States. But there's only one that's so good that Weebay Bryce, Avon Barksdale's primary enforcer in The Wire's first season, agreed to confess to several murders in exchange for one beef sandwich.
Fuck it then. For another pit sandwich and some tater salad, I'll go a few more.
Medium rare, lot of horseradish. That sandwich is the pit beef, and it is woven into the culture of Charm City as thoroughly as Baltimore itself is part of The Wire. In the show, Weebay and D'Angelo's earlier beef run was to local legend Chap's Pit Beef, located in the corner of a strip club parking lot on the Pulaski Highway since 1987. That's where Weebay said they'd find the good shit. It was that same Chap's Pit Beef where in a 2009 episode of No Reservations, Anthony Bourdain met up with Jay Landsman, a Baltimore detective who inspired the character of the same name in The Wire, while himself portraying another character. The history of pit beef can't be traced back to the early 20th century like many of America's signature sandwiches. Rather, it was in the 1970s, along that same stretch of Pulaski Highway, that pit beef came about. It was an industrial area, the Pulaski Industrial Area as it's still called, situated north of the port of Baltimore and the steel mills of Sparrows Point, miles from the inner harbor of Fells Point, downtown, all the touristy spots of Baltimore I mainly saw on my one trip there in 2019. Pulaski Highway was constructed starting in the 1930s to connect Baltimore with nearby communities and continuing northeast to the Delaware border. The stretch of that road on the outskirts of Baltimore was, by some accounts, dotted with shacks selling pit beef by the 70s end. But even with an origin so recent, within living memory, I have yet to find more details than simply Pulaski Highway, 1970s. The barrier for entry in making pit beef is relatively low. It is sometimes called Baltimore barbecue, but unlike other forms of American barbecue, which involve low and slow cooking over long periods of time, good for rendering the connective tissues in tougher cuts of meat into gelatin and infusing them with smoky flavors and aromas, pit beef uses lean cuts like top and bottom round, cooking them quickly, directly over charcoal, blackening the outside of the roast while leaving the insides rare to medium rare. Or, as food writer Allison Robicelli put it in a 2019 Washington Post article, barbecue tastes like smoke. Pit beef tastes like fire. One of those lines that's so great I wish I'd thought of it. I've been to Chap's once, and I always thought when I got around to writing about pit beef I'd go back to Baltimore and try all the places I missed that first time around. Instead, this time I've made it myself. As mentioned, pit beef doesn't take much. A big hunk of bottom round with a nice fat cap, seasoned simply with salt and pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, some paprika, and a cheap charcoal grill. My pit beef sandwich, a Kaiser roll, heated for a few minutes in the oven to put a little crispness on the crust. Pit beef, piled high with plenty of the good red rare bits. Tiger sauce, a hot and creamy horseradish sauce that is part of the signature flavor of a pit beef sandwich. And a few rings of raw white onion. This is a terrific take on the roast beef sandwich. Pit beef's combination of a charred exterior with that crimson rare center, tasting of charcoal fire with a bit of sweet smoke from some cherry wood I added, piled high, succulent and savory, punctuated by the pungent crispness of onion and the sinus-singeing horseradish sting, little softened by the creamy sauce that carries it, well enveloped by a bread roll that was just sturdy enough to hold this ensemble together, but not notable enough to draw attention away from the interplay of savory beef and piquant condiments. It was so good, I ate another one just like it, and then several more over the past week. A 12-pound beef bottom round roast goes a long way, sliced thin and piled into buns in 6 or 8 ounce increments. And while I do hope one day to get back to Baltimore and try those other pit beef stands, well, I'm already looking forward to making this my own pit beef again.